Hosting for the Dice Tower is generously provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 491.
The best of 2007, 10 years ago.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom is sleepy, following a 30-hour gaming marathon, but we keep him going with some questions from the mailbag, a tale of sadness, and our top 10 games from 10 years ago, 2007. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the linguini to my Remy, Tom Vassell.
I do not know of which you speak.
It was the highest regarded movie of 2007, according to Rotten Tomatoes.
What movie is that?
Ratatouille.
Do you know I've never seen Ratatouille?
Really? No, that's a great one.
Well, here's the thing. I started watching it at I was at an all-nighter at school. For some reason, it was an all-nighter. And I was busy doing other things to stay awake and just never saw it.
Okay.
Which is kind of an interesting segue since I just got back from sort of an all-nighter.
Yes, I was wondering how that went. The 30-hour gaming marathon has just wrapped up. You said you just walked in the door in time to record the podcast.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. It was good though. This is how all marathons will be done in the future.
Okay.
We did 30 hours, but we took 2 3-hour breaks, which really helps a lot because everyone just goes away and clears their head and they all spend time eating together or something. But also just having 30 hours, different people would take breaks. Like I went to bed at 10 and got up at 3:30 and came back in the morning and came over.
Okay.
And then all the guys staying up late at 3:30 were able to go crash.
Now, did you just have sleeping bags off camera?
No, we stayed at a hotel.
Ah, okay.
So that's something we can do all the time.
Right.
And we also had a really nice setup at the Cool Stuff headquarters, which was great because let's say we were missing a game, what to do?
Yep.
That actually never happened.
Okay.
But it could have happened.
It's nice to have that as a backup plan, yes.
I guess that wasn't really why, it was a good location to do it at. And Stephen Bonacor from Stronghold Games and Zev Schlesinger from WizKids Games, Rob and his son Justin, me, Sam Z, Marty Cannell from Rolling Dice and Taking Names.
Yeah, he drove down. That's pretty cool.
Oh, he flew down.
Oh, he flew down. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so he was our replacement for Eric.
Oh.
Well, folks, this is another segue into this. We may do another one of these this year. But if we do that, that's if we reach our stretch goal in our fundraiser. Now, as of us recording this show, our fundraiser has just reached our goal.
Yay!
Huzzah and hooray, and really, we thank you guys. If you don't know what we're talking about, you can go to our website, dicetower.com. There's a link to our fundraiser on Indiegogo, where we have all sorts of fantastic promos and prizes and dice towers and such that we're charging really kind of ridiculous prices for because we're not really selling them. They're
Right.
gifts to you for donating and backing the Dice Tower and allowing us to do this another year. There's a lot of costs involved in the Dice Tower for salaries, traveling, equipment, just have to buy another camera, and different things going on. And our show, a lot of shows say this, but it's really our show is possible because of you guys.
Right.
So if you're interested in doing that, now that we've passed our goal, we have many different stretch goals. I believe Eric Summer doing his top 100 is one of them.
Yeah, I don't have to do it if we don't reach the goal.
Yeah, and I don't know if I like that position you're being put in. Back us, please.
No, I do enjoy doing the top 100 every 2 years, and so I really hope we reach that level so I can do it again. The kids are already asking, when can we do the countdown again?
Yeah, well, maybe in a couple years, one of your kids will have their own top 100.
Who knows?
Well, either way, it has been an interesting thing. So I'm drinking tea. I think it might come across my voice is not 100%.
Yeah, you're a little gravelly.
All right, well.
We're also recording in
anyhow,
the afternoon, which is unusual for us. We usually do this as a late night thing, and it's just weird to be at a different time of day.
It is. So there's more danger doing it this time because kids can burst in.
Well, won't that be a surprise?
Well, we'll see. There's just a lot going on, folks, and we are getting closer and closer to episode 500.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so one of our stretch goals for our fundraiser is actually to bring in the original host of the Dice Tower, Joe Stedman, for episode 500. We're going to record that when we're at the Gamma Convention in Vegas.
Cool.
And then we're going to be switching to a 40 to 50% different podcast in episode 501.
Ooh, 45% different.
Yeah, that feels right, doesn't it?
Okay.
I mean, we're going to keep some stuff the same, and we're going to change other things. I'm 50% of the podcast, and I'm not going anywhere.
So 5% of me will still be around.
Yeah, Eric's back to just doing the intro and outros.
Yes, exactly.
No. Eric is sticking around. Let's not start stupid rumors. It's funny that when rumors happen and different things, I don't know. I just get a kick sometimes, but. There's a lot of these fake news sites out there, like the humor news sites, like The Onion.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I get an email from someone that's like, "Can you believe this?" Like, please check the source before you get too upset.
The Onion.
Over what is happening. So we played a ton of games at this 30-hour marathon, but they're all games games we know how to play, games that are fun, nothing really new. Mm-hmm. Although I did play an upcoming game from WizKids that was new. It's a cooperative game about shutting undead from coming out of a portal.
Okay.
That we won barely, and its name is I'm forgetting it, so I'll have to talk about that one later. And I also played Vegie Garden from QSF Games.
Okay.
Which was pretty fun. It's a real light game about collecting vegetables from a garden, and you collect a vegetable, then that gives you an action that you can do. So it's very light. It fits their name, QSF, Quick, Simple, Fun Games. So that one's coming out soon.
Yeah, I had a whirl at this, I think, at Essen, and enjoyed that as well.
Right. Over the course of the game, you're only drawing, I think, 7 or 8 cards. Or 6 cards, I forget. Over the course of the game, and then you get that action. It's really that simple. And in a short game, I kind of like that. There's just some manipulation when it's over, and I don't know. It's just a very fun little game. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about some big games. Eric, why don't you start us off with a game that, if I recall correctly, at the beginning of 2016, this was one of the most hyped games. Like, oh, this game's coming. It's going to be exciting. And then got totally obliterated by other games from Stronghold Games like Terraforming Mars and Great Western Trail.
Quite possibly, yeah. This is
no
Jorvik.
One's talking about this one. Right.
Jorvik is the name of the game. It is a new Viking re-implementation of an older game from Stefan Feld called Die Spiekerstadt, as well as integrating, I believe, at least elements of an expansion, which I had not played, but I had played Die Spiekerstadt a few times. This is a sort of a combination worker placement and auction game. The goal of the game is to earn points by acquiring different cards, and there's all different types of these. There are ones that defend against invaders, and they show up periodically throughout the game. You'll either earn points or lose points if you have the greatest or least army. There are cards that the more of those you have, the more points you will earn. There are also cards that let you translate goods into stuff, and goods will show up on these cards as well. Like a ship will show up and you draw goods out of a bag, and if you get this card, you now have those goods and can trade them, sell them, turn them into victory points if you get certain clusters of them. There's all sorts of cards that you want to put into your tableau. Now, the key of the game is how you get these cards, and you've got 4 little meeples, 4 dudes, who you can, I guess, indicate your preference to buy these cards. Each round, a number of them show up on the board. And in the basic game, that's all you see is 1 row of cards, and you will be placing guys in front of those cards to indicate that you're interested in them. There's an advanced version, which I'll get to in 1 second. So On your turn, you place one of these guys out, and you put them in a row in front of one of the cards that you're interested in. If there's already somebody in front of that card, you put them in the next slot in line. You can have up to 8 guys in front of a particular card. Once everybody is done selecting cards, or putting their guys out, then you go down the line of cards, and the first person in line may buy that card for a price equal to the number of people in line. So if there's 4 guys there, that card's going to cost me $4 if I'm first in line. If I don't want to spend $4 on that, 4 coins on that card, I take my guy away, and now the next one's in line, and it now costs 3. This continues until either somebody buys the card or nobody buys the card, and the thing gets ditched, and you move on to the next card. Now, money is extremely tight in this game. And so you usually can't buy everything you're in line for. It's just not going to happen. So you have to make very difficult decisions, and you go in a specific order as well. So there might be a card that you're not that interested in, but you don't want to pay 2 coins for it because you need those 2 coins to buy the one you really want farther down the line. Very tough decisions there. Now, the expansion, the advanced game in Jorvik, adds a second set of cards on the top. And it's so if there's 6 cards on the bottom, there are now 6 cards on the top as well. And instead of placing a guy in front of one of the regular cards, you can take one of these cards, any one in the row you want, put your meeple on it, and then put that into a specific row up at the top. After you've sold off all the cards on the bottom, you now go to this top row, and this is sort of a flip side of the same mechanism. Whoever is the first card in line may then buy that card for the number of cards in that row. So if there's 5 cards that people have selected on this upper row, that first card costs $5. And then the next one is 4, 3, 2, 1. So last player in turn sequence often gets a pretty good advantage in that row because they might not get first choice of what card they're interested in, but they will be able to select one for 1 coin because it'll be last in that row. I found that to be an interesting twist on the whole mechanism. I did like that, and I think you should play the advanced game if you're going to play this.
Well, I don't think... I talked to Stephen about this, and I just... It's kind of mind-boggling to me that they even call it the advanced game. When you take that half away, it's like you take half the game away. It's not an advanced game. It's just a game. You take it away, it's like basic and normal, not... If that makes sense.
Right. It's almost an intro version to get you comfortable with the mechanism. It's far more interesting with the full board. In fact, the board actually, this is kind of neat. The board, if you only open it halfway, is enough for the basic game. So like it's a 4-fold, quad-fold board. And if you only open up half of it and lay that down on the table, that's the basic game. And then if you fully open the board, now you got the whole game.
And you should never play the basic game, ever.
I don't think
ever.
No, I mean, maybe if you really just wanted to run through the mechanisms real quick. But that is basically the Spiekerstadt is the basic game. And then the expanded version is the full game. Anyway, you should always play the full game. However, I have come to the realization, both in playing Die Spiekerstadt and Jorvik, that this is not my style of game. I tend to be a mechanics over theme sort of guy, but this one is almost too dry, too crunchy, too tense. This is one that you stare at the board a lot, shaking your head slowly, like I don't know what I'm going to do here. There's so much competition for all of this stuff. You can't guarantee that you're going to get anything in any particular round and have the money to do what you want because money is so tight. And the only consolation you get if you don't buy a card in a round is you get $1 extra, $1 extra coin when you reset for the next round. I guess you kept your money and didn't buy anything, so you should be able to buy something next round. This isn't criticizing the mechanism because it's a very tight, well-oiled machine, but this is for players who want a very deep, tense auction experience. And if that's not your cup of tea, if you don't enjoy wrestling through that sort of thing, this is not the game for you. But if you liked Die Spiekerstadt and didn't go for the expansion, go for it. This is a lovely expansion, lovely reimplementation of that system, and Die Spiekerstadt is very well regarded. So it's certainly worth a look if you like that style of game. But I've come to the realization that this is not for me. So this is a middling rating for me. It's not the game's fault. It's just too tense for my taste. That's Jorvik from Stronghold Games.
Well, I think we should mark this moment down where I like a Stefan Feld game more than Eric.
Interesting.
Yeah, I really like this one. I like it because it's mean. I mean, it's really mean.
It's very mean. Oh, yeah. You can increase the cost for something. You know, if you know, even if you don't care about the card, if you have an extra guy that you don't know what to do with, you can easily increase the price for everybody in that line, which can easily drive it out of the reach of whoever really wants it.
Right, and you're constantly thinking, if I increase this price over here, maybe they'll still buy it, but then they can't buy this one over here that I really want.
Yep.
And maybe they won't buy it, and then I can get it for a cheaper price.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a cool concept, and I will agree the theme makes no sense.
Yeah.
And there is some pretty strong luck in regards to which cubes come out and when.
True.
But I still think it's really fun. I very adamant that basic game does not exist. You got to play the full version.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, for me, I have Vikings Gone Wild, which sounds like a TV show you would watch at night when your parents aren't around.
Maybe you would.
I said you.
Oh, okay.
Not me.
Oh, all right.
But it's not. Apparently, it's based on a iOS game. Vikings Gone Wild is a deck building game. The original one's a video game. It's an app / Facebook game. It's from Everyday I Play. The new one's from a new company called Lucky Duck Games. And I first played this at Board Game Geek Con. They showed it to me. I was very impressed with it. It's a deck building game, and in this game, you are building up a Viking village and getting resources, beer and gold, because apparently that's what you use to do everything.
Uh-huh.
And you buy more buildings. Some buildings will produce beer and gold for you each round. So you know how many deck building games have cards that give resources. You know, like I'll play a card. This card gives me a beer. This card gives me a gold. And then I'll use those to buy other things. But you can buy buildings that will produce that beer and gold every turn, besides what you draw in your hands. And then you can buy other buildings that can store that beer and gold. So you can store up a bunch of stuff to buy different cards. And most of the points from this game come from buying attack cards where you will attack other players' buildings, which might turn some people off. Like, oh, I don't want to attack other people. But in this game, attacking the other players is not really a negative thing for that player. You simply get points for attacking them. There's a few negative cards in the game, like steal a beer from another player or whatever. But for the most part, attacking players is just a way for you to score points. And in fact, it might backfire on you because if that player has, you can buy defensive cards. And if a player attacks you, but you can successfully defend against them, then you will get points instead of the attacking player. And I really enjoy it. There's a lot of different options and different cards. The iconography and artwork and everything is just really stellar. I put it in the same box as Clank. Clank was a deck building game where you went into a dungeon and stuff. It took deck building and added some more stuff to it. This does the same thing. They're very different games, but they both scratch that same itch. I've added both of them actually to my collection. Vikings Gone Wild. My voice is going. Is just, it's really entertaining. Another thing I really like about it is that when you reach certain milestones on the victory point track, you get a reward card, which might be a superhero like Thor or some sort of really cool card. And then that's like a special card that's in your deck that no one else has. And that's just a lot of fun. So that's Vikings Gone Wild. Major thumbs up for me.
All right. One of my favorite light card games is Nimmt, and its many iterations that have shown up in its years since its
7
initial...
Nimmt, 8 Nimmt, 9 Nimmt.
Yeah. Have there been that many? I know there's 11 Nimmt.
I don't know. I just make that up.
Oh, okay. This is the most recent one. I picked this up in Essen when we were in Germany. It's X Nimmt. I could describe this basically as a gamer's version of 6 Nimmt. If you're familiar with 6 Nimmt, you've got rows of cards and everybody plays a card simultaneously. They're the numbers 1 through 104, I believe, in 6 Nimmt. It's, I think, maybe 1 to 100 in X Nimmt. But you're simultaneously playing a card and everyone reveals, and based on where your card fits into the rows, you may be forced to take cards. That's 6 Nimmt. What X Nimmt does, it's got the 3 rows that you are going to be adding cards to are different lengths. There's a 3-card, a 4-card, and a 5-card length row. So there's a little variation there. Also, the object of this game is to get rid of your cards. So anytime you take cards, most of those cards are going to go into your hand. I should say that you have to take cards if your card can't fit into the row. You know, you put it sort of in sequence. So if I've got a 46, it might have to go in the row with the 40, and it's not going to go in the row with the 52. And if it doesn't fit into the row, if it's, say, the 6th card in that 5-card row, I have to take those 5 cards that are there. My card becomes the new card in that row. I need to take all but one of those cards into my hand. So now I have more cards to get rid of. The remaining card goes into something in front of me called the X row. I've got a specific row of cards that is worth 0 points, because the object of this game is to avoid getting the negative points that are represented by these bull heads on each card. And those can range from 1 to 5, maybe even 7. I'm not sure if that's the case in this version. But there's a whole number of these bull heads on the cards. And if you're stuck with them, that's negative points for you. However, your X row doesn't matter. Those are worth 0 points to you, which is great. Sounds easy, right? Except you have to build your X row in sequence as well. So if you have to take a card that doesn't fit into your X row, all of the cards that are already in your X row get flipped over. They're now worth double negative points. And your new card becomes the first card in your new X row. And this could happen multiple times, which would be terrible. At the end of a round, as soon as somebody runs out of cards, all the cards in your hand count single negative points for each bullhead symbol you have on those. Your X row is worth negative double points, and anything that's in your X row is worth 0. You play 2 rounds of this, lowest score wins. I really like it. I think it's a nice twist on the system because it is a closed system. You deal out cards, and then there's a bunch that aren't in it in that particular round. But you know that a particular card may be out there, and it sort of cycles through a couple of times. There's some decisions to make that maybe you want to take a row because it has a good card to go in your X row. That makes it easier for you to do other things and get rid of a card that you really want to get rid of out of your hand. I like the choices here. It's not tremendously deep, but it is certainly more deep than 6 Nimmt, and I liked it. X Nimmt, thumbs up.
Better than 6 Nimmt?
Well, it depends on the audience. If I was playing with family, like my aunts and uncles, I would still pull out 6 Nimmt. But if I was playing with my parents, who are a little more savvy, I would pull out X Nimmt.
If X Nimmt is, let's say, twice as good as 6 Nimmt, that would make it 12 Nimmt, right?
Sure. I mean, X, you have to solve for X.
If it was half as good, it would be 9.
Right.
I need to know what this Nimmt is. I need to know what it is, Eric.
I'd say, let's say it's 14 Nimmt. It's better than 11. And I like 11. You can call it 12 if you want.
I'm super confused. All right. Okay, so let me talk about Dicemasters, because I've never done that before.
I'm sorry, I was drinking something.
I really like Dicemasters, of course. Well, they just came out with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Dicemasters set, which is the second Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Dicemaster set. It's self-contained.
Okay.
So you don't need to go out and buy different packs and stuff. You get everything in the set. So in this set, they have the, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Leonardo. And they have Shredder and then some of the other bad guys. But for the most part, everything else is different than the first one. In the first set, they had 2 Splinters characters, which was a little odd. And that means there's no Splinter character in the new set, which is okay, I guess. And what have you, but it's just fun. It's a good self-contained set. If you've never played Dicemasters before, it's a good way to jump on board. And even if you don't have to jump on board, like keep playing. This is kind of like buying one of those Magic Duel decks where you have 2 Magic packs and you can play and you don't care if you ever buy any other Magic cards.
Right.
This is the same way. So if you like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I do, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of them. I don't know some of the characters in this set. I'm like, I don't know who these people are, but hey, I'm going to use them in my battle. But I still am a big fan. This is still one of my favorite games. So check out it from WizKids, the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Dicemasters set.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's called Heroes in a Half Shell.
Turtle Power. Last thing I want to talk about is an app that I've barely scratched the surface of. I've just poked at it for a little bit, but Mysterium has just been released from Asmodee Digital, and it is the new, I guess, English language edition of Mysterium, which I haven't played. I only played the older editions, the Polish editions of this game. So I'm still sort of exploring what's different about the board game and what's just new from this edition and what's new to the app. There is a story mode in this, which I was interested to figure out. For one thing, the polish on this app is pretty nice. There's like a little news scroll at the bottom with some humorous statements, and the art is pretty, and you can zoom in on the cards and see all the details of everything, which is neat to explore. But the story mode uses the AI to give you clues. And I found that really kind of odd because what I've always enjoyed about Mysterium in the tabletop version is that relationship between the player who's giving me the information and having at least some sort of connection between me and that real person as I try and decode their clues. Having the app just hand me stuff, I don't know what kind of logic the app is using. And so I'm very confused. Like, are there certain rules it's supposed to be following, or do I need to get to know the app? Do I need to have a discussion with it outside of gameplay? I don't know. So I'm still sort of tentative on this. It's very early. I've just poked at it a little bit. But it is out, and it is something worth exploring. It's fascinating me and confounding me at the same time. That's the Mysterium app. I need to poke some more.
All right. Santorini. Santorini is a 2-player abstract strategy game. Have you played this one yet, Eric?
I haven't played it, no. It looks pretty.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's a 3-dimensional board based on the island of Santorini, the cities there. If you look at pictures of that island and you look at this game, it's like, oh, wow, they really made it look similar. Santorini's a simple game. You have 2 people on the board. I have 2 people. Eric has 2 people. And it's on a grid, a 5x5 grid. And on your turn, you can move one of your people to any adjacent spot in all directions, including diagonal. And then, well, you must move one of them. And then you must build a level of a building next to that worker. So there's 3 levels of buildings. And then if a 4th level, you can also build a blue dome on top of the building. When you move your worker, you can move up 1 level. You can't move up 2. To go up to a 2nd level, you'd have to go up to a 1st level, then up to the 2nd level. And if you ever move on top of a 3rd level building, you win. That's how simple the game is. Oh. So you're moving and blocking and moving and blocking, and it's really a fascinating little game. And I think I would like it, but I love it because the box also comes with these God cards. And each player will get a God card, and they give you like a special ability. It could be an alternate victory condition. It could be a special ability that only you can do. Like you can move up 2 levels, or when you build, you can build underneath yourself rather than next to you. Or you win if you ever jump off the 2nd level of a building. And just it's like every time you play, it's a different game. And it's fast, it's thoughtful, it's beautiful. It might be becoming my favorite abstract strategy game.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the 2nd game. Well, actually, I'm keeping the Turtles. I'm keeping all 3 of the games I'm talking about today. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, Santorini I'm just so impressed with that. I sat down and I played it, and then I played it again. And then another day I pulled it out and played it like 8 times in a row. Just so much fun. Okay. And it's rare for me to play a game that many times. So that is Santorini. That's from Roxley Games, by the way. And I think Roxley Games is really showing good quality games that they're putting out.
Nice.
They're at the point now where if they say they're coming out with a new game, I assume it will be good.
Cool. That makes me happy to hear that. And now, here's a tale of sadness. with Dr. Mel and Cauliflower.
Every Wednesday evening, my gaming group gets together at a bar downtown. We tend to arrive around 8:30 and leave around midnight. The first half hour is often lost on chatting and deciding which games to play, so usually it's past 9 before we actually get down to business. Tonight is a particularly chattery night, and after the long explanation of the euro we've picked, the clock has already struck 10 before we start to play. Needless to say, all three of us are afraid we may not get to finish the game before closing time, which is midnight. We take turns quickly, making sure to avoid AP or any frivolous rules discussions, and by midnight we are deep into our penultimate round. Hey, we may even be able to finish this thing, I think confidently. I have been ahead for most of the game, and this could become my first win since Kraftwagen several months ago. Even though it is past midnight now, the owner of the bar kindly lets us finish up as he starts putting up the chairs. It is 1:45 when the last round is over. I am 6 or 7 points ahead of my closest competitor, and it is time for final scoring. My endgame bonuses add up to a nice amount, and I feel this could well seal my long-overdue victory. I move my attention to the scoring track to add my points, and my score counter has disappeared, and so have the other two. In fact, all the yellow players' pieces have vanished from the board. Bob, who had been running last, had already started putting away part of the game. Why did you do that, Bob? Well, it didn't matter. Oh, it did matter, Bob. It mattered to me.
I had this happen once.
Did you?
I did not care, but I was involved in a game where one player decided that since they were not winning and they were bored and wanted to play something else, everyone had gone to a lunch break. This person came back early and packed the game up.
Oh, ha!
Well, you say, huh?
Yeah.
One of the other players was not quite so happy.
Yeah,
There was a quite animated argument about it.
that's pretty annoying.
It didn't matter.
I don't know if I made the mistake. This has happened before. That
By
somebody
accident?
who's no longer in the running, like the game's over, okay, great game, everybody, and you start packing stuff up, not realizing that, maybe there's some calculation still going on, or, somebody still wanted to record their score. And if it doesn't matter to you, it's easy to skip a couple steps ahead just to move on to the next thing. I could see how that can happen.
I see. Okay. Well, still, it's a sad tale.
It is.
All right, let's do some questions.
Mr.
Vassal, yes. Do you have any superpowers?
Are you really working on Nothing Personal, Junior?
What are your top 10 candy bars?
And now the Dice
many
Tower
games
will
do you have
authoritatively, definitely,
Mr. Vassal,
possibly,
would you be such a
maybe
snappy dresser?
answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the bathroom?
Pretty does not a great game make, says Aaron. Well-polished turds are still turds, no matter how shiny they might be.
Okay.
Again, Aaron is saying this, not Tom Vassal.
Yes.
That said, says Aaron, I'm one of those people that has a hard time playing a game that looks horrible. I can think of no better example as Cosmic Encounter. I want to play this game. I want my family to play this game. The cover of the Fantasy Flight game printing looks great. The little saucers look great. But frankly, the graphic design of the rest looks like Uno and a vintage Commodore 64 had an unwanted child. Those cards and player boards make the manual for my garage door opener look like an illuminated text. Is this a common complaint? Do you think the efficient yet yuck graphic design gets in the way of this game finding new players? If so many people like this game, why hasn't it been brought past 1977 in terms of looks, says Aaron.
Wow.
Aaron, I'm going to say no, that's not a common complaint. I've never heard anyone say that before.
Well, I mean, what are the cards? Most of them are numbers, right?
Right, they're big numbers or they're big N's for negotiates and some other stuff. And I want them to look like that because the rest of the game, the aliens have these these big colorful pictures. You have the discs. It would be this dissonance, I think. And it's really important when you see these numbers that you see the number.
Right.
I don't want to see a 16 and think it's something else. I have never heard anyone complain about this before.
No,
but I mean,
what
hey,
would you like it to look like? You want, flowery art all over it?
I don't know. I really like I think it looks great. I mean, obviously I'm biased.
Right.
It's my favorite game and such. And I don't think every part of the game is perfect. I think that the new dials for the new expansion, I don't like how they are put together. I think sometimes some of the flare cards have too much text on them. There's a lot of text on those flare cards. I wish they could figure out how to fix that a little bit. But those cards themselves, I want them to be stark and looking like those. I don't think they look like 1977. Have you seen the Mayfair version? Have you seen the Eon version? Have you seen any of the other versions? They're all much, much, much worse.
Yeah.
But maybe people agree with him. If you agree with Aaron, start a support thread for him on our forums.
There you go. Jim wants to know how you handle a game group when you have multiple players that have analysis paralysis. We recently played a game of Cry Havoc and after 3 hours had to quit, and we were only half done. It was the first time we played it, but consistently games go longer than they should.
This is actually a good question because we often talk about analysis paralysis, and we talk about it as if there's one person slowing the whole game down.
Right.
But there are times where it is a whole group or multiple people. And at that point, you're the problem. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You're saying, okay, everyone's slow but me. Well, you're the odd person out. And there's no way you're going to make the whole group play faster.
Right. The others are like, why isn't he thinking about his turns? Come on, slow down, buddy. You're making us nervous.
You can't use peer pressure, right?
Right.
So you're either going to have to go in for the long haul, or maybe they're not going to be so offended if you bring your phone out on their turns. I normally don't recommend that, but in this situation, or you might want to look for a new play group. But I really don't think you can change a whole play group. One person, everyone can put pressure on them and say, come on, move faster. But, or like you can, hopefully if your group's big enough, switch to a different group of people that's moving faster. But right. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck. Maybe someone else has an idea, but I can't think of anything. Groupthink matters.
My group tends to run a little slow. I think we've discovered that. We've got some thinkers in our group, and sometimes we know that certain groups of players, when you put us all together, are going to be more of a problem than if they're split up. So it sometimes helps to separate those AP prone players, so you don't end up with an entire table of the heavy thinkers. But yeah, if you have them all at the table, there's not a whole lot you can do about that other than to recognize it at the end, go, we all took way too long. This game's supposed to move a little faster, and have a group's consensus that says, yeah, we should probably speed things up next time if that game makes it to the table again. That's happened a few times after we finished up, especially a first play. We go, wow, that took 3.5 hours. It's probably should be closer to 2.5. Yeah, we could probably speed things up, knowing the rules a little better next time. Okay, let's do that, everybody. Good talk.
Okay, well, there's one way to do it. Matt says he was listening to our podcast. It was when we were on the Portal podcast, and we discussed how we seem to develop connections with people because they listen to the show. And Matt says he agrees with that because he listens to us and other podcasts, and feels like he's a connection with the individuals involved, but also seem to somewhat have an odd participation in the show. He used to listen to another podcast about something else and felt similarly, and he met them at a convention, but he shied away thinking, they don't know who I am, they don't, so why would I talk to them? But at another convention, he finally did go say hello to them, and one was great, took the time to say hello and talk games with me. The other two were very dismissive about it and really talked amongst themselves while I stood there. What was strange was I, says Matt, didn't think too much about it because I really didn't know them anyway. In a normal social situation, I'd have been pretty angry to be simply cast aside and ignored, so I simply went about my business, although it did eventually lead me to not really listening to that podcast that much anymore. Do you feel mad, says Matt, when complete strangers come up to you praising or criticizing your podcast or simply talking to you like they know you? After all, in some strange way, they do know you, at least topically, but you have no idea who they are. I know the gaming community is smaller and most people are good people in it. I'm not sure I would rush up to either of you if I saw you at a convention or other venue because of these reasons. It all sometimes seems like a strange phenomenon. Phenomena.
Do. I'm sorry.
That's a good response.
It is true. It's a very strange relationship, and this was what we talked about on the Portal Gaming podcast when we guested there. But here's one way to get past that. If you come up to us at a convention, for example, and if something that we said spoke to you, mention that. Hey, you guys were talking about such and such game. I had such a similar experience. And now we're talking about something mutually similar. And we can get to know you a little bit and actually have a worthwhile conversation. Yes, we don't know you if we haven't met you before, but that can change very quickly. We've met listeners and gotten to have a great time with them in various public venues. And it starts with finding that common ground. I loved when you guys did this thing in the episode. You know why? Because my brother is just like that. Oh, really? And then we got something to talk about. So make that, our connection is the show. So follow that path when you meet us next time.
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. I'm very cautious too, because I know about conventions and things like that. Be very careful to assign any kind of aspirations to people when you talk to them at a convention.
That's
They might
true.
be super busy. They might be really tired. So I'm always a little cautious when I say, oh, that person they ignored me. It just might have been the wrong time, wrong place. We've had people email us before and say, things like, oh, you guys seem tired. You seem like you didn't want to talk. And we never want to give off that impression, but it just might happen. We don't mean to do it. But on the other hand, for me and probably Eric specifically, I really do encourage people to come talk to us.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. You just got to realize a couple things. One, we talk to a lot of people, and there's a good chance we will forget you from convention to convention. That's not because we don't like you at all. And the more you come up and talk to us, the more we'll start remembering you. There's a lot of people we know because they talk to us at every convention.
That's
see
true.
us at, right?
Repetition's
I know
important.
I know that person.
Yeah.
But sometimes someone comes to me and goes, hey, remember we talked at Gen Con? I'm like, oh, Gen Con? Maybe. But see, if you talk to us about something different and you don't come up and say, hey, do you know what the hot game of the con is that no one else knows? Like if you come up and say something, then it's easier for us to remember you and talk to you. So it did feel odd at first. It feels less odd now because we're expecting people to come talk to us. There's a couple times where odd things happen, like our omelet meal this year.
Oh, yes, where we were chatting for the entire meal and then we didn't realize that the two guys next to us were fans until they left? Yes.
Right. They left and they're like, hey, by the way, Tom and Eric, good luck today. We're like, what?
Like, what? Why didn't you say anything sooner? We could have had a whole conversation.
Right.
Anyway.
And people always, so many times people come up to me, they're like, well, I saw you sitting over there and you look like you didn't want anyone to bother you. I guess I just need a sign that says, if I didn't want anyone to bother me, I would go to my room.
Yeah.
Because really, that's the kind of the case of it, right? It is, you can get away from crowds if you really want to. And so if I'm out in public, I don't, like if I'm eating by myself at a restaurant, it's because no one would go with me.
Yes, exactly.
So you can come and sit and join me. And then I'm going to leave before the ticket comes. No. No. But I don't know. It's just, it's fun for me. And I always encourage people to come up and talk to me. And other people have asked, like, why do you go to conventions? And there are a lot of different reasons. One, because we network with publishers and distributors and designers and things. We learn about things at conventions. Two is so we can provide you guys with up-to-date coverage of games. But those two reasons are not as big as the third reason, which is to meet the people who listen and watch our shows. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal for us. You know us because you listen to us each week. Well, some of you listen to us every other week. We can tell by the numbers.
Right.
But you listen to us. And so you know about us because we talk about our lives. We talk about our families. We don't know you, but we can get to know you a little bit at a convention. And then you'll see that Eric is not as nice as he portrays himself to be on the podcast.
Well, no, I don't want them to get to know me that much.
Because when you'll see him look at me, and then you'll see me flinch, and you'll know.
Yeah, that's what happens. Eric, not me, but another Eric, asks me, Eric, what is the longest playing game you think you could do justice to with a 172-second review? And then Tom, he asks, are there any gaming-related topics that you won't address in a Tom Thinks segment of Board Game Breakfast? What are they and why?
Well, let Eric think about his. Mine's easy. I won't ever address politics because it's extremely divisive. Mm-hmm. And I won't address... What else wouldn't I address? I probably wouldn't address things that I found too uncomfortable or too personal that just shouldn't be addressed there. I don't think I would ever call somebody out. Today we're going to be talking about Joe Schmo Designer and why I don't like him.
Oh, boy.
I don't know. I'm just making it up. I can't think of it. But politics is always my number one thing. We're not talking politics.
As far as 172-second reviews, it's almost easier now that I'm doing 172 and not 72. If you remember the audio reviews, that was really, really hard to distill a game into that short amount of time. I did some heavier ones this year or last year with Logistico and, what was it, Bus. Bus is like a 3-hour game. That can get...
I challenge you. Here's 3 games for you to do a 172-second.
Yeah.
Roads and Boats.
Okay.
D-Mocker.
Yep.
And the just released from Mayfair Colony.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard about Colony?
I only know the briefest of things about Colony.
Yeah, it's like a 6-hour Euro game.
Yeah, oh, good. What I would do is I'd try and get as many of mechanisms as I can, and then when I time out the script, I know how much I need to cut out, and I would just keep zooming out and zooming out and zooming out. So it would mean that I would not be able to do as much detail in specific rules, but I would sort of gloss over major mechanisms and maybe focus on 1 or 2 things, as opposed to doing a complete in-depth rules explanation. So I could still do a heavy game. It just won't be a detailed tutorial. It'll be much more of an overview of the entire system.
Fair enough. Well, now we know.
And knowing's half the battle.
But my challenge still stands.
Okay. I only know 1 out of those 3 games, so...
Wait, you haven't played D-Mocker?
I have not.
I feel like I've said this to you before in the past.
That I should?
No, that I probably asked that same question.
You have. It's on the bucket list.
See, folks, how I forget things?
Yep.
I don't even know Eric. Let's go back a decade when I was only 30.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10.
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Okay, well, 2007. Now, last time I talked about 2012, and I declared it the best year of gaming and challenged people to disagree with me. And other than a silly disagreement, no one really did so. So I feel vindicated.
Okay.
2007 was a fine year of gaming, but it was not the greatest year of gaming.
Sure.
There's some very good games that came out this year, but I don't own them all. 2007 was kind of was still in that ramping up from 2004, 2005. Those are 2 incredible years. Mm-hmm. So 2007 was still following in those footsteps. And it's really weird to me to look at some of these games and go, these are 10 years old?
Yeah.
But there were some games of note that we should mention before we get to our top 10 lists, making sure some of these are not on these.
Yeah, a couple of them on your list did make it, yes. There's
actually one game on Eric's list that I did not expect to be on there. So anyhow, Last Night on Earth is from 2007, and that's worth noting because that's Flying Frog Productions. And this was the game that really put them on the map. They've kind of focused on just their one game for the last several years. But I hadn't heard of them before Last Night on Earth, really. So that kind of brought them there. Also, and this one's not on Eric's list, I thought it would be, is Brass.
It was close.
We would get yelled at if we did not mention Brass. We know Brass came out this year, and for many people, it's the pinnacle of Martin Wallace games. Zuluretto, which was another one I thought would be on Eric's list, was,
Yeah.
I believe, the Spiel des Jahres winner of 2007.
I think it was, yeah.
It might have been the winner of 2008, because the Spiel des Jahres is not for a specific year. It's since the last year, so it's a little confusing sometimes. Or, you know what I mean? I don't know exactly what year it won, but it's a very popular game, and I still see expansions coming out for Zuluretto. Let's see, Jamaica. Now, if Sam and Z were here, this would be in their top games. And isn't it interesting that this year they just announced an expansion for Jamaica? 10 years later. Biblios. That's a small little filler game that seems to have some pretty good staying power. Every year I read about people who are like, have you heard of this little game called Biblios? It's a great filler. Like, yeah, I did. StarCraft. From Fantasy Flight. This was, I believe, the last game that they did with Blizzard. Because they had done the Warcraft and World of Warcraft games and things like that. Mm-hmm. And they kind of re-implemented this in their Forbidden Stars game to some degree. Although that one, now they've broken the relationship with Games Workshop. So go figure. Red Dragon Inn is another one to mention because that's the game that essentially keeps Slugfest games alive. I believe we're up to Red Dragon Inn, the 30th expansion for it at this point. It's not the kind of game that I'm really interested in, but a lot of people really enjoy this one. Get Bit came out this year. That one really had some good staying power. Container, I believe, was the last game of Franz Benedolong because he passed away just shortly thereafter.
Yes.
Tribune was a game that for some reason I was thinking had come out years before 2007, but it feels like a classic game. This is done by the same guy who did D-Mocker, which we talked about earlier. And let's see what else. Tammany Hall, 2007 was kind of the beginning of the future Pandasaurus IDW games situation. And then in sad notes, HeroScape Marvel came out, and I was excited, and they never came out with an expansion. And it made it, I'm still mad about that.
My kids still play with the HeroScape figures, the Marvel ones.
As HeroScape or just as toys?
As sort of creating their own version, yeah.
All right. Well, all that being said, let's get to our top 10 with a bad choice. Go.
Number 10.
Starting things off with a bang, I'm going to go with Notre Dame. This is the Stefan Feld game about avoiding rats. And sort of action selection, card hand management sort of thing. It's a good time, and I like I really like the way that the board comes together based on the number of players. I know that's a weird thing to get super excited about, but there's based on how many players there are, there's a centerpiece, and then the pieces that make up the map are the weirdest, oblong shapes you've ever seen, but they fit together in a certain way based on how many players are playing to make one solid map. I just think it's cool. Notre Dame, my number 10.
Yeah, every once in a while I meet people, and I talk about how I hate rats, and they're like, no, there's pet rats, and pet rats are really nice. Watch the movie Ratatouille, blah, 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 blah. And then I play Notre Dame, and I remember why I hate rats. It's interesting, though. Notre Dame, I think, it's either Notre Dame or In the Year of the Dragon. One of these games, I think, this was like when Stefan Feld, he was not a big designer in 2007. Mm-hmm. But this started to really bring him to the forefront. Nowadays, he's like, oh, Feld. This is one of his first popular games. Mm-hmm. At the same time, Hamburgum, which is my number 10, was by Matt Gertz. Now, Matt Gertz is not as popular today as he was back then.
True.
He had the one shtick, the rondelle. Mm-hmm. Well, it wasn't his only shtick. But for some reason, Hamburgum is just... I don't like all his games, but I love Hamburgum. I like it for the theme, building churches. I like that. I like it comes with little bells in it and stuff.
Yep.
But what I really like is just how you have to get these resources and you're connecting things. It's so Euro-y. But in this game, the rondelle works really well. And it has different maps. Just a very fun game. Hamburgum.
I agree. This was in my early teens. Really good game.
Number 9.
My number 9, I think this is the surprise for you, Tom, is Cutthroat Caverns. A game of dungeon delving, but it uses the mechanism of whoever does the last blow on a particular monster is the one that gets credit. But if nobody helps to defeat the monster, then you're all going to die. So it's this semi-cooperative deal. I really like the variety of this. There's some straightforward monsters, ogres and stuff, but then there are traps that use different rules. It's a ton of jockeying. Take that. I'm going to swing really hard. Oh, no, you're going to miss this time because I played this card to interrupt you. And the whole thing is chaotic, but it's a jolly good time. Cutthroat Caverns, number 9.
Yeah, it's really interesting that this is on your list and not mine because I thought historically I liked this game more than you. I didn't even think it'd make your top 10.
Yeah.
For me, the only reason it got knocked out essentially is because there are now shorter games like Bloodborne, I think I like better. Cutthroat Caverns is great. It's just slightly longer than I would prefer.
Yeah, it slid a little bit because 5 years ago I had it at number 8.
I can't even remember 5 years ago. Wow.
I went and looked.
Wow. All right. My number 9 is Archaeology, the card game. Oh, I like this game. Now, when it came out in 2007, it was just a little game from Adventureland Games from Phil Walker Harding in Australia. He had made a board game, Archaeology, the board game, that did not go over well at all. So he made a little card game, and it was fun. You're collecting sets, trading in sets. Just a simple collecting card game. Z-Man Games came out with a version of this either in 2015 or 2016. That's really, really nice. But it's even before that, it was just a really fun. It's one of my go-to filler little games. Archaeology, the card game.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Phoenicia, which we were talking about my 72-second reviews. This was one of my first 72-second reviews. A civilization building game from Tom Lehman that has some similarities to Outpost. But it's engine building and building up your forces and money's tight, and it pushes all those buttons for me. And this was my first introduction to that system, and I really enjoyed it. I'm sort of sad to see that the game has been like totally in bargain bins at this point. I keep seeing really inexpensive copies show up, but maybe that's a great way to discover this one. Phoenicia, my number 8.
I disagree with Eric a little bit about this one. I liked Phoenicia too. Phoenicia had a couple problems. One, the rulebook was nigh incomprehensible. This was the first time I had to go online and download stuff from Board Game Geek. I remember distinctly finding these things that taught me the game. I could not figure it out from the rulebook. Rulebook was really poorly written. Also, when you put the game in the box, you could literally, I think, fit 10 games of Phoenicia in one Phoenicia box.
Okay, yeah.
But the main reason, and I like Phoenicia, I liked it. But another game came out the same year that totally obliterated it. And we will both talk about that game later on.
Okay.
All right, my number 8 is higher on Eric's list, but I bet everything blows up before then.
It's likely.
Number 7.
Number 7, I have to put this on the list. That's Monopoly Tropical Tycoon, which is
it was on my short list.
Best version of Monopoly. This is the one that you play for victory points at the end of the game. You play until one player goes bankrupt. The game ends at that point. And then whoever has the most VP wins the game. And it's possible not only to go with houses and hotels, but also instead of hotels, you could put parks, which I think are worth nothing but victory points. There's casinos. There's all these other buildings that are worth varying numbers of points, but may give you in-game benefits. And there actually is a pivot point between when you stop buying the in-game bonus buildings and start buying the straight-up victory point buildings. Plus, there's a DVD with environmental conditions and humor. There's like television reports. It's a good time. If you can track them down, and a few years ago I was able to do so on eBay, pick up a copy of Monopoly Tropical Tycoon. It's my number 7 from 2007.
Still my collection. My daughter really likes it, and I like it too. I know that we say Monopoly, and you're like, next, but don't. This is easily the best Monopoly. Easily.
Yes.
Rob Daviau, who did Pandemic Legacy, okay, had his hand in this game, so you really need to pay attention. My number 7 is 1960, The Making of the President. I like election games. They're a lot of fun, but they can often be overburdened with too much numbers. This one does a really good job at showing the United States electoral system. They picked a very close election. That's also far enough in the past that we don't argue as much about it. So, no, it's 57 years ago. Or is that? Yeah, 57 years ago. So less of a problem. But it built upon the earlier game from one of the designers, Jason Matthews, had done Twilight Struggle. And this used the same thing. It's much simpler than Twilight Struggle, to the point where my wife would play this one with me. She would never touch Twilight Struggle. Mm-hmm. But I do enjoy this one. A lot of cool things in it. 1960, The Making of the President.
Number 6.
My number 6 is going to show up on Tom's list in just a little bit, so I'm going to arrange these 2 potted plants right here, sit down, and wait for something to happen.
Shrubbery. My number 6 is higher on Eric's list. I will eat something.
Number 5.
My number 5 did show up on my list last time in the number 3 slot. That's Marrakech. This is the game with those adorable little carpets. It's simple, yes, but I like the risk-taking that comes with where you position this little dude, and you're rolling the die, seeing how far he moves, and if he lands on your opponent's carpets, you're going to have to pay them. And so how bad can the pain be? What are my chances of hitting my opponent's rugs? But then you get to lay down rugs and cover up their rugs, making the pain less bad next time you go around. I like the pieces. I love the rugs. It's a good time. Marrakech, my number 5.
My number 5 is Thebes. This is the game that should have won the Spiel des Jahres. Although it didn't go up against Zuluretto. So Zuluretto must have come out at the beginning of the year, and Thebes must have come out at the end of the year.
Okay.
But Thebes is that game where you go on archaeological expeditions, reach into bags, pull tiles out, finding hopefully good stuff. But the more a bag is mined of the good stuff, the worse and worse it gets to go digging in that area. Mm-hmm. Really fun game. They made a Thebes card game a few years ago, which is pretty cool. I like it a lot, but I think the original one's slightly better just because of the act of actually reaching into a bag and pulling out tiles.
Yeah.
A neat, fun game, Thebes.
It is fun. I think I got hosed by the luck just one too many times on this one.
Number 4.
Number 4, Tom mentioned earlier. This is Galaxy Trucker. You've got the speed game at the beginning as you're grabbing tiles and putting together a spaceship, and then you take it through basically an obstacle course, a run, a race, where you can collect goods and fight off pirates and pick up passengers, and hopefully make it back home in one piece because you remember to put shields and batteries on the darn thing. It's chaos, but it is a gloriously fun round of chaos. Galaxy Trucker, my number 4.
My number 4 is Eric's number 6, and that's Colosseum, which happily is being reprinted this year by Tasty Minstrel Games. Although they have a long, tough road ahead of them if they're going to match the production on the Days of Wonder edition that came out in 2007. Because that game is just beautiful. But it's not just beautiful, it's fun. And it's not only fun, it has a unique theme. It's called Colosseum, and you think, oh, they're fighting in a Colosseum. No, it's about putting on shows. Mm-hmm. All sorts of shows. And so there's a bit of an auction as you get the different actors and things you need for these shows. And lions and horses and shrubbery. And then you have to trade with other players, and then you put the show on. And there's even roll and move in this game, which traditionally I dislike. But it just comes together. And did I mention stunning production because it's top of the line?
Yeah. I've seen a couple pictures of the Tasty Minstrel version. I think they're trying to get it to be that level.
Oh, I don't discredit that they're trying. I just think it's a tough call. I hope they do it. I mean, why would I not? You like it too, right?
I do.
I do indeed. 6.
That's why it's there. I'm looking forward to seeing the bits on the new one. I don't own this one.
Number 3.
My number 3 is going to show up on Tom's list in a bit, so I will play an Explore card and hope I get something good.
So many people make the mistake. Anyway, my number 3 is Kingsburg. Now, Kingsburg is one of those games that it's 10 years later, and in fact, I believe the 10th year anniversary edition is coming out at Essen this year. That's going to include the expansion, because the expansion really buffs this game up, and even have some more cool stuff in it. And I'm very excited about that. I've always liked the idea of rolling dice and then placing those dice on different spots to take them, like using dice as workers. It's been done before, but Kingsburg really brought it to the forefront. Kingsburg was extremely popular. I still will gladly play this game today. So that's my number 3, Kingsburg.
Number 2.
My number 2 was my number 2 5 years ago as well. That's the 2-player Cosmos game, Perry Rodan, The Cosmic League. It's pick up and deliver. It's got spaceships you can upgrade. It's kind of a theme I enjoy. Good times with Perry Rodan, my number 2.
My number 2 is Age of Empires 3, which also just had a new version come out. A lot of our games had new versions come out this year.
It's the time frame. There's a lot of 10-year anniversary, or that's the cycle basically.
Although there's a couple that were 9 years. I guess your number 1. Well, anyway, came out last year. But anyhow,
yeah.
Age of Empires 3 is a worker placement game. This was one that, up to this point, Eagle Games had been known for war games, like late war games. Miniatures, a pile of soldiers in a box. And Age of Empires 3 just totally turned it on its head. Like, hey, this is worker placement, but then it becomes area control. And the theme was really strong. Go out and explore the new world. Really love this one. The new version that just came out is extremely expensive, but it's a fun game. That's Age of Empires 3.
And finally, number 1.
Number 1 is Agricola. And I'm not sure why this didn't make my list 5 years ago. The only thing I can think of, because I know I had played it 5 years ago, is that I put it in a different year's bucket or something. I don't know why it wasn't on the list. Love this game. I love the theme. And have I told the story of my son playing the app on the show?
I don't remember it, but that doesn't mean anything.
That doesn't mean it didn't happen. So my son was just sifting through the iPad looking for a game. He says, I wanted to play something new. What's this game about? I said, I don't know, buddy. That's a game about farming, but I think it's a little complicated for you. He said, no, I want to play this. And he got the concepts of needing to feed his people. He really got the concept of needing to feed his people. He collected food over everything else in the game. But he did end up with a score of 0 at the end, which, considering that you start with like -14 is pretty good. And he was blocking me and taking the thing I needed. And, he's going to be a shark with Agricola soon. Anyway, my number 1, Agricola.
Interesting. Agricola is my number 6 because there's no doubt this game is amazing. I really like it, although I wish people would get off this feed your people thing that it introduced, 10 years of feeding people. However, the reason it's number 6 is the same reason. I always say it's been knocked down, and that's because Caverna has knocked it down that much for me.
Someday I'll play that one.
You still haven't played Caverna?
Yeah, no. I don't know anybody that has it.
It just seems like that's a game your group would like.
Yeah, maybe, but we have Agricola, so that's good.
Dice Tower Con, I'm teaching you Caverna. It's happening.
Okay.
Or, yeah, that's the next convention we're going to be able to play a game at.
Yeah, probably.
So, we'll see. Okay, my number 1 was Eric's number 3, and this is the game that I think obliterated Phoenicia, same designer, and that's Race for the Galaxy. Now, there's differences, obviously, between the two, but it's the same kind of build things up and do things. It's the natural progression, in my opinion. Even though Race for the Galaxy also has a lot of similarities to San Juan.
Right.
But Race for the Galaxy, being able to play cards and use those cards for different things. And each turn you pick an action, and that action is going to be discovering planets and then having those planets produce resources or conquering planets. It's just an amazing card game that I think works so very well with 2 players. And 3 too. It came out with a whole pile of expansions, most of which are actually pretty forgettable. But the base game itself, despite its very weird symbols, I shouldn't say they're weird, but almost incomprehensible for new players. And every time I say this, there's a couple people like, no, they're not. Look, folks.
I don't think incomprehensible is the word. Overwhelming is perhaps.
Overwhelming is what I mean. It's just that there's so much going on, and you can say, I have no problem with it at all. That's fantastic. I actually have no problem with it either. But I've taught enough people that I know it's a problem.
Yeah. Interestingly
enough, they just released a new version of this game this week.
This is the new standalone game, right?
Yeah, it's a redoing of his other game. I think it's called The City was the original one. Anyway, there's a new little Race for the Galaxy game floating around out there. I have not played it yet, although I held it in my hands yesterday and then it was packed in a box, and I think Z stole it. But I will get it done eventually. But Race for the Galaxy is phenomenal. I really like playing this one. However, it's one of those, it's in the category of games, and I think we should do a top 10 list on this sometime, Eric. Games I only want to play with people who know how to play it already.
Interesting. Okay.
That would be
so basically games that are hard to teach.
And not just that they're hard to teach, but I don't feel like teaching people the strategy either. if that makes sense. There's a lot of games that I'm like, oh, you've never played this game before? I want to teach you. Let's learn. Let's play. I feel that way about a lot of games. But this isn't a category game like, you don't know this one? Let's play a different game.
The experience of teaching is enough that it's no longer fun for you?
Maybe. But it's a game where I think it's a game that I kind of thrive on how I want to play and experience players. I love that experience. Right. So teaching someone new, you're like, okay, well, this game is going to be less fun for me because of that. Yeah, we're definitely
and maybe for everyone
10.
too. You want to have maybe an equal playing field for this style of game.
Yeah, because I will obliterate somebody who's never played before.
Yeah. Race for the Galaxy was my number 1 5 years ago, my number 3 this time. It's still a terrific game. It's eclipsed a little bit by Roll for the Galaxy, which I am much more willing to play. I think it's easier, more streamlined, and has, I don't know, a little more fun to it. I always feel a little stressed out when I'm playing Race with experienced players because I feel like I'm getting smoked.
We're definitely doing that top 10 list. That's a good idea, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Good job, Tom.
All right. Well, folks, thanks so much for... Oh, wait. We're not done with the show. We still have a contributors.
No. We still need to give contributors. You're ready to bail.
Mark, save us.
Hey, everyone. It's Mark Zielinski, and my favorite game from 2007 is really easy, and that's Zoo Loretto by Michael Schacht. This is a game where you're putting together your own zoo. I absolutely love this game. It won the Spiel des Jahres in 2007. It's definitely in my top 10 games of all time, so check it out, Zoo Loretto.
Hello. I'm Ignacy Cevicek from Portal Games.
And Stephen Bonacore, Stronghold Games. We are Board Games Insider.
And the best game of 2007 for me would be Race for the Galaxy, which I love and I played hundreds of times, although there is many other great games in this year. Great year.
Very good year indeed. Agricola came out that year. But I'm going to go with Galaxy Trucker. I mean, that's just a genius game by Vlada, and it's just so much fun, and who cares who wins? Your ship gets blown up every time you do it. Galaxy Trucker. Bye.
I totally agree as well.
This is Professor Scott Rogers of Biography of a Board Game. And what was my favorite game of 2007? Well, that would be the card game Parade by Naoki Hama, published by Z-Man Games. It's an Alice in Wonderland-themed card game that's much more complex than it first appears. My favorite version of the game is the 2010 reprint with lovely artwork by Chris Quilliams. So, that's my favorite game of 2007, Parade.
Hey everybody, my name is Eric Kyo from Push It Out Podcast and Push It Out Video. And my favorite game from 2007, which is the year I got married coincidentally, is Galaxy Trucker. Now, Galaxy Trucker is my first real-time game. It combines the frantic element of trying to create your ship that you can best survive through the perils of space. And then it's a lot of fun because when people see their ships getting crushed and getting destroyed, people will groan in pain and you will laugh in glee. And also the app right now on iOS is really good. So that's my favorite game of 2007, Galaxy Trucker.
Hey, this is Paul Owen of Dice Tower News. Without question, the best game of 2007 in my mind is Agricola, which perfected what Kalis sought to accomplish, and to which all subsequent worker placement designs aspire to be compared. It is rich, it is strategic, it challenges, it frustrates, and it rewards. We never tire of it. If there are better games today, this is one of the giants on whose shoulders they stand. Agricola.
Marty and Tony from Rolling Dice and Taking Names here. 2007 game is probably the one that really got me heavy into board games. StarCraft, the board game. We picked it up strictly because we loved the video game, and we saw how deep a board game could be. We just had to try it. Tony?
Oh, Marty, I couldn't agree with you more on StarCraft, but let's share the love a little bit here. So I'm going to kick it over to Vikings. Z-Man Games, oh, that is such a fun game and enjoyed it just as much. So for me, even though StarCraft is always in my heart, Vikings.
It's Roy Canny from Epic Gaming Night, and for me, it's Galaxy Trucker. I love the zaniness of trying to build your ship with all these crazy different ship parts in real time, putting guns and engines and cargo bays and all sorts of different things, trying to prepare your ship to go through the different obstacles that are ahead of it. Dodging asteroids and trying to take out pirates and pick up goods on different planets and make the most money you can in the 3 different phases. So for me, Galaxy Trucker.
Hello guys, Luke from the Broken Meeple, and even though I don't think 2007 was a particularly great year for games, Biblios is my pick. A game played in two halves. Your first half is card selection while leaving rubbish ones for your opponents and a spare pile for auctioning. And then the second half is where you go through that auction pile and this fast bidding takes place where you try to claw some of those cards back. In the end, you're collecting sets in order to win points based on those sets. Really underrated filler game that needs more play. Biblios.
This is Brian from Cult of the Old. Virtual dead heat for me for Age of Empires 3 and Kingsburg, but I'm going to go with Kingsburg, especially if you play with the expansion. I love the dice placement thing, and even if it's generic fantasy, which I'm not a huge fan of, it works together well with the mechanics. The whole game gels really well. You feel like you're building stuff, interacting with others, not hard to explain, and most people have a great time with this thing. This is one of my favorites.
Any on there that we didn't talk about Parade?
Yeah, interestingly,
let's see. You got Mark to say Zularetto.
Parade came out that year, but it was a Japanese version. I don't think it came out from Z-Man till maybe 5 years later. It didn't come out right away. And Vikings, that's that Euro game that had nothing to do with Vikings, but was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's one you really need to pay attention to what everybody has in front of you. I've played it online a lot, and it's one you have to keep switching over. All right, what do they have in front of them, and what do they want? It's a tough one to keep track of what everybody wants.
All right, People's Choice, number 10, Age of Empires 3.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, 1960, which I'm actually surprised about. I didn't think it had that much recognition to make it on the list. Number 8, Colosseum. Number 7, Zularetto. Number 6, Biblios. Number 5, Galaxy Trucker. That's probably one of the most popular games. Now, why was that not on my... Oh, I highlighted that one on mine. And then it never actually came... Did we skip Galaxy Trucker?
No, we talked about it. You just never said anything about it when we got there. It was your number 8.
I was so caught up in Coliseum getting ready to talk about it. I love Galaxy Trucker. I love watching my stuff blow up. So anyway, good job, people, for agreeing with me and Eric. All right. Validating our choices. Number 4, Kingsburg. Number 3, Agricola. Number 2, Race for the Galaxy. And number 1, Jamaica. I was surprised by that. Jamaica beat out Race for the Galaxy, Agricola?
Wow.
But maybe that's because Race for the Galaxy and Agricola have been dethroned by Roll for the Galaxy and Caverna, respectively.
Maybe.
That's intriguing, because I did not expect this.
I still need to play Jamaica then, I guess.
Yeah, I think they played it during the live feed, but I was sleeping during that part of the thing.
Quite possibly I was as well.
Now can I close the show? I think I'm good now, right?
I think, you have clearance.
Okay. Folks, we really appreciate you listening to this. We really appreciate you backing us. We're still, we still have like 2 weeks left in our fundraiser. So if you're considering, and you can go through multiple times, or you can just back and not ask for any reward. There's all kinds of things. I don't want to like drive this down your throats too much, but I do want to keep reminding people that it does exist. Thank you so much for that.
You got about... 2 weeks left, right?
That's correct, yes. And we're also excited because for the first time ever, one of our shows reached 100,000 downloads.
Wow.
That's really exciting.
That's great.
That was our
great.
best of 2016. That's 1/10 people, Eric.
Wow.
That's bigger than Gen Con.
That's fantastic.
I don't know. But it is kind of cool.
Oh, man.
I remember we used to get excited when one of our shows reached like 5,000. We're like, whoa.
Yeah. My goodness.
All right. Well, folks, thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 491, was recorded on January 14th, 2017. Coming up next week, what is your gaming resolution for 2017? Find out what our contributors have to say. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Find a link to our fundraiser at dicetower.com. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom and me, with production assistance from Jason Thompson, Itai Perez, Eric Matthews, and Rob Searing. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Interplanetary calling plans offered by Rates for the Galaxy. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at Dicetower@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including the Out of Game podcast, 20 Minutes of Filler, the Snakes Cast, the D6 Generation, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, Dukes of Dice, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So it sounds like, Tom, you need a nap, huh?
I need a nap. I need my voice back. I need... I don't know what I need.
You could have just gone to sleep more often and told everybody else to play the games for the marathon.
Never.